The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to Afterlife Radio. I'm Kalila Smith, coming to you live from New Orleans, the land of voodoo. And I have with me here my co-host, Billy Roberts from England. Hello, Billy. How is it going?
Hi, Kalila. It's really nice to be back, and it's nice to be anywhere these days, isn't it?
Right? It certainly is. It's wonderful to be here, and things are kind of a rainy day here and a rainy day where you are. So, but it's also nice to have some freedom. We're starting to open up here, so everything's good. Everything is good. So, I have a wonderful question for you, Billy, because, you know, everybody's been in lockdown a lot lately. Everybody's been spending a lot of time at home, and a lot of people have been home with their pets. And people are calling in to me and also messaging me and asking me questions about, it seems like my cat sees a spirit, or my dog is barking at something that's not there. And a lot of people, and I feel that animals see things that we don't see. I feel like they're much more psychic than we are. What's your opinion of that?
Yeah, well, strangely enough, I thought we'd explore this today, particularly the healing powers of our pets. But animals they seem to have a specific neurological component in their brains that allow them to monitor molecular changes. So the spirit world is not a separate entity to our pets. I think the spirit world and this world of earth, sky, and human habitations seem to be one entity to our pets. But like people, I don't think all animals are particularly psychic, some more than others. And I've made a study over the years about what pets have healing abilities, what dogs have healing abilities, as opposed to those who do not. So I think we'll look at this during the program.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yes, I've noticed that many times. My cat seems to see things that I don't see. They'll be looking at something up in the corner, and lots of times I think it's my daughter around the house that they're looking at, because it's usually the cat that she raised that sees her. But there's a lot of things about animals that are very, very interesting. I've also noticed when people find the animals looking at things, I've always tell them to take a picture, take a photograph of your animal. And lots of times you'll actually have an orb or some ectoplasm around the animal. Recently, I've been getting some readings from people where in the reading, loved one on the other side is sending a message saying to watch their animals, watch the cat, watch the dog, because they see me. They see me, they're watching me. It's all very, very fascinating. Animals are just fascinating creatures anyway.
Well, but, I was brought up as a dog person. Always had a dog and a cat when I was a baby. But it's only over the last 17 years or so that I've become a cat person. We've got two cats, indoor cats, and they're both very, very different. But what I learned many years ago is you wouldn't think it, that cats do suffer bereavement. They go through a grieving stage. And I remember two cats that weren't particularly friendly in the same household. And one of them passed away, but the other one took to the corner and would sit there in the corner with its eyes half closed and its head bowed as though it was grieving or praying or something. And it went on for several weeks until obviously the bereavement was over, and then the cat perked up a little bit. But, cats are wonderful creatures. I've got to say that because we've got two, and they're beautiful pussy cats. I love cats.
They're very sensitive. I love them too. I love cats and dogs. I love all animals. And they are very, very sensitive. They really are. And I don't know if they've done this in England, but there's actually been situations here where they've brought animals into nursing homes to visit with the patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps bring up it kind of boosts their immunity a little bit. It brings their level of happiness up a little bit. And there's even been cases, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it. There used to be a cat, and I think the cat finally passed away, but there was a cat that they used in nursing homes that would actually tell the doctors when someone was going to pass. And the cat was actually predicting when someone was going to cross over. The cat would go and sit on the bed of someone, and that person would pass the next day. So the cat had some sort of connection to the spirit world that cat knew, and it was letting people know when someone would pass. Now, I certainly wouldn't want to have the cat around very much because I'd be a little nervous, but nonetheless.
Yeah, this is not a cat I would want around me. But there was a serial offender who'd spent all his adult life in prison. And there was doing some research with the way animals affect our personality and affect us psychologically. And they brought a little dog a puppy dog, into his cell and allowed him to keep it. And it transformed him. It transformed his attitude. He became less cocky. He had a different attitude altogether. And when he got probation, on parole, his life was transformed because of this little dog. And he got himself a job, and he just had a completely different role to play in life. And it was attributed to the little dog that was given to him and looked after him. So we know dogs release a very subtle fragrance, a subtle energy that precipitates the endorphins in our bodies. So we know that they can do many different things. They can sniff out bombs, but there's a man he's a dermatologist I think it was I'm trying to remember where it was now. I think it was in the States, but can't remember the actual place he was. But he ran a clinic, but he had two dogs, a Schnauzer called George and a golden Labrador called Breeze. And these dogs were specially trained by him to sniff out cancers in the body that couldn't be detected by traditional means, particularly. And he was amazing. And these dogs were able to smell the exact position that the person was suffering and save many lives. So I don't know whether he's still going. I think one of the dogs passed away. But, traditionally, when we look back, or historically, we look back through time, the cats were revered by the ancient Egyptians almost as deities. But in Elizabethan times, if you go into any Elizabethan home in the UK, obviously, you'll often see the four-poster beds are draped with fur. And this is cat fur, because the Elizabethan...
Oh, no.
Yeah. I don't think they actually killed the cats. It was after the cat was demised. They would use its fur because they believed that the cat fur, contained some kind of healing element that actually could ease the pain of gout. Now, what the Elizabethan apothecars did, they carried this to the extreme because they used to bleed the cat's ear, and they'd mix the blood with an infusion of herbs and vinegar and some other essence, and they would administer it orally to the patient who is suffering with shingles or some nervous disability, and they claimed it worked. Of course, that wouldn't be allowed today.
I wouldn't want to drink cat ear blood, but
So
Oh my,
they've always
interesting.
played an integral part in the stability, psychological stability of the humans. Fascinating.
It is fascinating. Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a little break right now for a commercial. And when we come back, we're going to talk about your books that you have
Okay.
written on these magnificent powers of the cats and the dogs. And it's a very fascinating subject. So we'll be right back.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour. A tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. And it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about. The Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
And we're back. All right, Billy. So let's talk a little bit about, you have 2 books that were written about your experiences and your experiments with animals, right?
Yes, I do. One is called The Healing Paw, published by HarperCollins. And the other one is called A Wag's as Good as a Smile. And they both explore the healing potential of animals and how they affect us in our lives, how they heal us, and how they can detect when we're not well. But also in one of the books at the back, I make a detailed analysis of the astrological status of cats and dogs. For an example, I'm a Cancerian, and a Cancerian canine's the same. Well, they are more or less. They're very needy, and they have all the traits that the human Cancerian has. So I give a chapter on all the astrological signs, but also the scientific evidence about cats and dogs. Dogs seem to have more potential where the healing is in a home. And I interviewed many veterinary surgeons, and I found they all agreed on one thing, that a child brought up in a home without any pet at all is often more volatile and emotionally insecure in later life. But if you look at somebody who's always been brought up with animals, they seem to be more together, more sensitive, and often very creative. But Adolf Hitler, incidentally, is an exception. So if anybody's going to write in and say, what about Adolf? Because he was brought up with dogs and he was a vegetarian, allegedly. So here's an exception. So animals do play
That's interesting. That is
yeah.
very interesting. And when I was very small, I had brothers and sisters, but they were much older than I was. So I was really brought up like an only child. And I can remember being, 2-3 years old, and my best friend was a cat. And we had this cat. It was a huge, orange tabby, or as sometimes you guys call it, a ginger cat. Yeah. And that was my best friend when I was growing up. When I was a little child, I would sit out on the steps of outside our side door of the kitchen, and the cat would come and sit next to me, and I would talk to the cat, and the cat would meow at me, and I spent a lot of time with that cat. Everywhere I went, the cat followed me. And I see the same thing now with my little great-grandson. He just turned 3. My daughter got him a Shih Tzu puppy. And the puppy instinctively knew that he was going to be the pet of that little boy. And he immediately bonded with that little boy. And they're inseparable. They've been together now for only about 2 months, but they are now inseparable. And that little puppy knew that he was that child's dog. And it was pretty amazing that it was like the puppy just kind of instinctively knew that he was going to belong to that little boy.
What's funny because you're a prime example of how animals can affect you. And, you're sensitive and you do what you do. And my brother was completely different. He wasn't animal orientated, and it showed in everything he did. He was not a touchy-feely person, and he wouldn't stroke a dog. He wouldn't stroke a dog when he came to my mum's. But I've always felt as though, a cuddle a day or a pat a day keeps the doctor away. And this is proven today by we have something called PAT dogs. That's pets as therapy. And these are dogs who are specially trained. They're taken to the homes of the elderly or into certain hospitals where people are traumatized with depression or they've had strokes. And one particular man he'd had Parkinson's disease, and he'd also had a couple of strokes, and he wasn't very coherent. He'd sit staring into space all day. But they took a young Labrador, a PAT dog, and left the dog with him in his room. And they observed him through the window. And within 20 minutes, the man had proffered a hand to the dog and was stroking it, and the dog would jump up on him. And he started to be coherent. And over a period of days, a week, the man made an effort to talk. His eyes became full of life again. And over the dog had obviously grown up with him. He'd become accustomed to having the dog there. And they even tried not bringing the dog into him on certain days. And he would fret. He would actually pine for the dog. So we know that something goes on with animals. We don't quite understand. And, what makes me laugh is a lot of people say they can communicate with animals. I've actually got a chapter in one of my books about animal communication. There's no way this can be validated. I mean, people who can talk to, or say they can talk to an Alsatian or a Labrador, the Labrador is not going to verify this and say, look, yeah, you're right. But he is talking to me and I'm talking to him. So, I mean, but I have no doubt that you can communicate telepathically with animals or pick up if an animal is traumatized and needs its behavior checking. Then there are some people who are qualified to communicate telepathically to find out what's wrong with the animal. I mean, it's not always right, but I mean, there are ways of doing it. And there's a chapter in my book all about that.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yes, it's amazing things. Now, you go into great detail, though, in the book, because I have both books, by the way, folks, and they're fascinating. They're wonderful books, so I recommend them highly. But you go into real detail on the, the whole thing with the electromagnetics of the animals and the aura, and I'd love you to share some of that, because it's just amazing what your research has come up with.
Well, I think we've another book called Magic of the Aura also explains about bioluminescence. This is the scientific term for the aura. It's an optical phenomenon that surrounds every living thing. And animals, particularly cats, more than dogs, can actually observe it. And one of our cats is a tuxedo cat, with a white front, totally black. And she stares, Dolly, she'll cry for Dolly, my wife, to pick her up. And she'll just stare at Dolly, stare at her face. As long as Dolly holds her, she'll stare, obviously looking at something. And then she'll move her eyes to the peripheral areas of Dolly's head, as though she's watching changes taking place around her. And she actually you know that she's psychic, so much so that we actually scribbled out all the numbers of the lottery, hoping that she would select the numbers for us. That's how much faith we've got in Poppy. She hasn't produced the numbers yet, but we'll get round to that.
She's not interested. She's not a gambler.
No, she's not a materialistic person. Ellie is a sister, and Ellie's a long-haired tortoiseshell, and she's a mischievous, scally cat. and she has her own agenda. She too knows things. And I think you've got to live with an animal to get into their personality, and they've got to live with you to understand what you're about. They go on routine, and if that routine can't be broken, particularly with cats, as you know, they know when they want to be fed, and that's the end of it, and there's no getting away from it. But they know about, I see a lot of things in this cottage. I told you a witch lived here, and it's got a lot of history. It's 400 years old. And we'll see, particularly Poppy, the tuxedo cat. Her eyes in the night, she'll raise her head, bolt upright, and she'll look, and she'll follow something around a darkened room. And I will see something. And Dolly, sorry, calling Dolly Poppy now. That's what the pandemic's done to me. But she'll see something, and if I think I've seen something or there's a noise in the room, I always check Poppy, and if she doesn't raise her head, then you know there's nothing there. That's how good she is.
Wow. Wow. They are amazing. They are very amazing things. And I've seen articles, and I've also think that it was in one of your books as well. It's about when the cat purrs, that there's some frequency of the cat purring that creates change and healing in the body. Is that correct?
That's right. And also, cats don't meow to other cats. They'll only meow to humans. Right. They just stare at other cats. So there's obviously a telepathic process going on. And the pairing has a healing effect. And they have different tones to their pair. If you get I get Ellie, who cuddles up to me every night, and she has three different levels, vibratory tones. And one of them is just an ordinary purr, contentment. And then she'll have a purr when she knows I don't feel good, that sort of resonates with me and makes me relax. And before I know it, I've fallen asleep. So they do something with the sound of their purr. And dogs are different. How people don't understand, but scientifically now they've proved that dogs can heal backache. They can also heal depression and migraine. And they know exactly when you're in pain. And they'll often gravitate towards your back on a settee, and just to keep it warm. And people think that's all it is, the warmth of the body. But there's a lot more going on than the warmth of a fairy presence. They seem to emit something, and it precipitates some chemicals in our brains that causes healing to occur. So we know it takes place, and we know certain dogs are greater healers than others. For an example, the Labrador and the Border Collie, they seem to emit a greater healing balm, if you like. Some dogs, like a poodle, doesn't seem to have a great deal until it trusts, because poodles are funny creatures. They can be quite aggressive, but they're usually female dogs. But that once you have to earn their trust, and then they start to work on you, healing wise. So it's quite interesting. The only dog I can't take to is the bald one, the Vietnamese dog. No offense to the dog itself, but they've got no fur. So you don't know what.
Yeah.
I can't really take to them. I wouldn't take it from my home if it needed a place to rest its paws. I love all animals, but animals in the home are quite important. They said, I can't remember who it was that said, the more I see of people, the more I love my cats. I think it was not, what's his name now? The Mahatma Gandhi. I think it was him, although he didn't have any cats. But there's a lot of truth in it. In people who don't like animals, generally speaking, are not good with people.
That's true.
And cats, cats, Kalila, will gravitate in a crowded room. A cat will always gravitate towards people who don't like them because it's funny if you even notice. And they do a number 8 through your legs till
Right. They try
they
to
yeah,
trip them and kill them.
yeah. And then they get you down on a chair and then they jump on your lap and you're trapped. And I think that's how they win your heart because cats are very cunning creatures.
They really are, and I'm convinced, and and cats always find me. Cats have always found me. It's funny because now in my old age, people call me the crazy cat lady because I have quite a few. But the cats do seem to they do gravitate towards people who hate them. It's like they know that they're hated and they're going to go get in their face anyway.
Can
And
I just say, I've got to
it can
say
be
something.
amazing.
I've got to say this before we get. You keep referring to yourself in old age. Wait, come on now.
It
I'm
gets older, right?
yeah, that's a little bit older, but that's it. You're a mere child, yeah.
I'm a child, yes, but I am still the crazy cat lady. And I'm okay with that. I'm very okay with that. But it's interesting because I have quite a few cats, but there's one in particular. There's one cat. They do have different personalities.
Yeah, definitely.
And people who are not animal people, they don't realize that you're not crazy when you start identifying your animals with different personalities. I got this cat several years ago, and I was actually going to the shelter because after my daughter passed, I had room in the house. I could afford it, and I thought, there's this poor cat that nobody wanted, and it was in a cage for like 14 months, and it was like nobody should be in a cage for 14 months. No one wanted this poor little cat. And I
Oh,
went over to get the cat, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go get this cat. And while I was there, I went into this enclosed area where there were lots of cats. And when I leaned over to look for the one cat, one jumped on my back.
oh,
This tortoiseshell cat, and she's beautiful. She has half gold face, half black face, which are actually the colors of our football team, the Saints, gold and black.
oh.
And she jumped on my back, and it was like, oh my goodness, what, I have to take this cat too. I didn't want to not take the other one, but it was like she was asking me. It was like, okay, you've got to come too. So I got both of them. And this particular cat, she seems to be kind of like taking the lead of being the caretaker of all of them. She will go around and she grooms the other cats for them. She'll start licking them. Several years ago, I guess you remember when I had my little Yorkie. I had the little
Yeah,
4-pound Yorkie dog
yeah.
who finally passed away when she was almost 18.
Oh,
But the whole time that Pepper was sick, this cat would go and get in the bed, her little doggy bed with her and cradle her and stay with her up until the time she passed away. And
oh,
this cat it's the caretaker of all the other cats. If another cat gets sick, it goes and sits by it and cuddles it. And it's funny how they have different
yeah, they
personalities.
do.
And like you said, the dog breeds. I mean, some dog breeds are more affectionate than others.
Yeah,
But I have a Shih Tzu, which I love Shih Tzus, and the other one's a Shih
yeah.
Tzu with a poodle, and that one's crazy because of the poodle. But I also have another Yorkie, and I've always been had a penchant for the Yorkie. And my other little Yorkie, though, I would sit and work at my desk, and she would literally like be up against my foot. She was
Oh,
always just right next to me.
hmm.
And it's just amazing. But they do have different personalities,
How many
and
cats have you
people
got?
underestimate cats. We don't want to talk about how many cats I have. I have a lot, Billy. I have a lot of cats. Um,
Say no more.
I have a lot. Yes, I have a lot. There's a lot. A couple of them I had taken in after a hurricane because people
Oh,
there was a flood a few years ago in Texas, and people had lost their homes, and people were looking to get rid of some of their animals.
oh,
And so I took some
oh.
more in, and I was like, okay. But now I have enough. Now I have more than enough, and I have to say that the inn is full. I had to stop looking on Facebook and like having all of these posts come up about animals that needed homes. I had to cut myself off because it's like, okay, I can't see that anymore. But it's funny because you look at all of them and they all have different personalities. But
Yeah,
this one in particular, this one tortoiseshell, she's kind of the peacekeeper. She is the healer. She, she goes around and she'll just start, licking one of the other cats, or she'll go check in with the dogs and sleep next to them. And it's very interesting of how she just decided that, I'm coming home with you and I'm going to take this role in the household. And everybody lets her. There's none of the other cats, because usually when you get a new cat, the other cats hiss at it. There's a period of time in which, they have to get used to one another. Nobody had any problem with this cat coming in. She just kind of waltzed in like she owned the place. And pretty much all the other animals were very accepting of her.
15 cats is a lot, though, Kalila.
I don't have 15, Billy. I do not have 15.
I'm only kidding. I thought I'd get it out of you then. But...
No, I do not have 15. Not anywhere near. Oh, my goodness. That would be awful.
But,
I mean, it wouldn't be awful, but it would be too many to handle.
But it's not just cats and dogs that are being used. I mean, there's a girl, I think she was a thalidomide in London, and they trained a monkey, a small chimp, and the chimp would do everything for her, would fetch milk from the fridge, fetch the mail, would turn lights on for her, and all kinds of different things, and it understood everything she said.
Yeah, they're very, very smart.
Oh, monkeys are absolutely brilliant. Well, my dad was brought up in a well-known pet shop in Liverpool, England. And from when he was a boy, he had a pet chimpanzee, and it just grew up with him. And he had it. It died in his arms. I think it was quite old.
Aww.
And when it passed away, he said to me, a tear fell from its eye, and it reached out and touched his face, and it caused him to cry. And my dad wasn't an emotional man, but he loved animals. And he used to tell this story, and the monkey was named after him. His name was Albert. And he never forgot it, particularly the way it cried. And he was saying it did everything. It could do anything you told it to. It understood everything you were saying. So animals do play an important part. I can't really understand how some people don't like animals. And it really, I mean, we've had people coming for private consultations to our house, not this particular one, but the other house we lived in where you visited, where you stayed. And the first thing they said was, you haven't got cats, have you? Oh, no, I don't like cats. And I thought, well, you're going to have a bad reading, that's for sure. Jokingly.
Yeah. Some people have a thing against cats. They really do. There's a lot of people who don't like cats.
I can understand an allergy, having an allergic reaction to cats, but just a downright don't like them. Something about them which I can't abide. I just can't understand it, because they do play a part in our lives. And the ancient Egyptians used to acknowledge that fact, and they were bred in a certain way. They were revered as a sort of a godlike presence. And you can understand that when you get to know, not all cats are pleasant. Some cats are very unsociable, and, they can be quite vicious, some of them. But when you get one that's almost, well, you know that, don't you?
I do know that, yes. I had a very vindictive Persian who she would come and you've heard of the cat that lets you pet them and then it bites you? Well, This one would let you pet it, and she would walk away, and she'd get halfway across the room and then stop and turn around and cut you a glance and then charge back across the room and bite you and take off. She's very, very strange cat. But yes, sorry to interrupt, but yes.
No, it's true, isn't it? They're like people. Some people are obnoxious and some people are quite pleasant. Some are very aggressive and some are quite gentle. And the other thing I've written about in one of the books is the way some dogs will grab the lead when they want to go for walkies. And the truth is that the dog will impregnate your mind. The dog is manipulating you. You're You're not looking at the clock and say 9 o'clock, I'm going to take you for your constitutional, because dogs will always infiltrate you. They'll always influence your mind telepathically. And in some way, cats do that. They have a different way of working. They have a neurological navigational thing in their brains, and they can actually navigate their way home when they get lost by the position of the sun or the moon in the sky. They
Yeah,
can,
some of them do. They can come back. They
100 miles have been known for people to lose their cats, and they've traveled 100 miles because the person has moved house. But they can, and dogs have an unusual nose. They can sniff things that cats can't. It's a fallacy that cats can see better than humans in the dark. Some can and some can't. But dogs have a way of smelling things, and they can smell the changes in the electromagnetic atmosphere. So we know that the air is filled with electromagnetic energy, just as you'd coat a videotape with electromagnetic substance to capture images and sound. Then we know that the air is filled also with this electromagnetic substance energy that seems to capture sound, images. And I know we've done this before, but the air is filled with images from the past, not necessarily to do with the spirits of the dead, just photographic images that have been taken from past events. And dogs and cats can access this. They can monitor the changes that occur, and they know when a spirit is present. As you said earlier on, they also know when a person is going to die. And they show this in different ways. I think it's really fascinating.
It is. And you know, animals also, they have found that animals can tell when an earthquake's going to happen. They're very, very aware of what's happening with the weather and with all sorts of changes with the earth. They're very in tune to all of that, but they've also used animals, I think dogs, to tell when earthquakes are happening.
Well, all the homes in volcanic areas keep either a dog or a cat because they can detect the onset of a volcanic eruption up to 24 hours before it happens. And that's why they're using cats and dogs with people with epilepsy, because a dog or cat can be trained to detect the onset of an epileptic seizure some considerable time before it actually occurs. So, you know, they're quite unique. So if they can be trained for that, they can be trained for anything. And that's why they've been trained more recently to detect the instability of buildings. When somebody purchases quite a lot of land or buildings, the structures can be detected. The stability of the structure can be detected by a certain dog, a dog who can detect that it's unsafe and needs a lot of work doing to it. They find bombs, as we said. They do all sorts of things.
Very, very, very interesting. Yes, very interesting. So we're going to take another commercial break real quick. We will be right back. Step beyond the veil that separates our world from the world of spirits with me, Kalila Smith, as we uncover the mysteries of the afterlife. This is a spiritual journey as we try to discover if life really does continue after the physical death. Are after-death communications real, or do we imagine them? Get my book, Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, and find out. Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, available on Amazon.com by Kalila Smith. Okay, and we're back. So, Billy, let's talk a little bit more about this. I mean, so what can somebody do if they're not really understanding what their pet is trying to convey to them? Because we know that our pets do communicate with us. Like you said, the cats meow to people. And generally, I know what they want. I still haven't figured out what they want when they throw their body down across my walkway and across my feet. I feel like they're trying to trip me and kill me, but I still haven't figured out what they're doing there. But, you know, some people don't quite, you know, who maybe are not as in tune with what the animals are trying to convey to them. What can people do to maybe, get more in sync and understand what the animal is trying to bring to them or tell them?
Well, there are different pet meditations, and it depends solely on the type of dog or cat that you've got. I mean, pet meditation is not going to make you like or love your animal. I mean, if you're one of these people who just can't get close to a dog or cat because you don't feel an affinity with it, that's more your problem than theirs. And meditation does help. Now, for that, all you need to do is synchronize, if you can, just sit as close as you can to the dog or cat, stroking it gently on the back of the head to the neck, just very, very gently. And cats, they have certain glands at the back of the neck. You can actually, if you pinch the fur gently at the back of the neck, they love that. As you roll it between your fingers and squeeze slightly, that will cause them to purr. A dog just likes its nose being stroked from the tip right over the head. Now, if you can do that and calm it down and just sit quietly with it and try to synchronize your breathing. Obviously, they breathe at a different level to you, but try and slow your breathing down as much as you can and convey with your eyes closed. Try to convey your feelings. If there's some animosity that you think is being conveyed from your dog or cat to you, then you have to reverse that and try to transmit the feeling of you're living in my house and I want you to be my friend. It might sound to a non-animal lover, it might sound ridiculous, but if you repeat this, because animals are quite slow to catch on telepathically, because they work at a different rate to humans. So if you repeat the gesture over and over several times, it will eventually take it on board. It will register with it, and it might even open its eyes and look at you. And that's what you're looking for, to repeat something, say it over and over and over, and particularly to convey the word love to them, because they know this. And often, an aggressive dog is particularly if a dog's been neglected in the past, it doesn't know what love is. So you have to transmit this feeling, even if you don't have it. Try and feel it. Like, imagine it to be the teddy bear that you had when you were a child and used to cuddle up in bed with, because animals are cuddly at their best. And try and convey, and all the time stroking your dog across its nose, down its back to its neck. Or the cat, you can do the same with the cat. But cats like, as I said, you to squeeze the fur at the back of the neck and try to convey or transmit some kind of affirmation containing love and the need for you to be close. We want to look after you and all this kind of thing. And it works. Eventually, the creature will, and that's what you're looking for, is for it to open its eyes and to stare at you. It's either staring at you thinking, you touch me again and I'll bite your hand off.
That's true. That's true. They can always do that.
Oh, yeah.
But seriously, that comes in handy because, like all of my animals are all rescues.
Yeah.
And, people oftentimes will get an animal from a shelter and they think it's going to be the same kind of animal that they had maybe growing up, that they got from a puppy, and it's this perfect animal. And lots of times you wind up, I have a dog in particular, my Shih Tzu, who's part poodle. She's what they call a Shih-Poo. And she's crazy. She's a crazy dog. And the poor little thing, I'd actually gotten her from my granddaughter. And I brought her home, and I had her with the two Yorkies, and we were going out into the backyard, and I have like a little puppy yard that we first walk into to keep them away from, from the pool, but the little gate was open. And the first thing she did was she took off and she jumped into the in-ground pool. And I quickly put the Yorkies into a little separate area, and in my nightgown jumped into the pool to rescue this dog. And I called my granddaughter and I said, this isn't going to work for you. And I said, I got a feeling this is not a regular dog. Well, long story short, I found out many months later that the dog had been in a hoarder situation with someone that had 70 dogs. And I've had her now for 4 years, but to this day, I never know when she's going to go into this post-traumatic stress thing and start having, like, she gets very, very frightened very easily. And there's some animals that will never be normal, but then there's other ones, if you just give them time and give them a chance, you can bond with them. And sometimes you're adopting an animal whose owner may have passed away and the animal is still grieving. And that's important to realize too, is that they do have the same emotions that we do. And to give it time and patience, oftentimes you can actually rehabilitate an animal, or at least, get through to it to where things are easier for you. But so many people will go out and they'll adopt an animal and they bring it home and it's not perfect. And then they want to bring it back. Yeah, and that was always my policy. Once I get an animal, for better or worse, the animal's mine. I don't take them back to shelter. If I adopt them, I keep them. And if it's a bad deal, then I live with the bad animal who tries to trip me and kill me. But that's okay because I made that commitment.
That's the right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like people don't understand that if you do give it time and you really try to bond with that animal, you can come up with the best friend of your life and really get a very loyal companion if you just give it a little time and patience.
Stay tuned for more Afterlife Radio.
Follow me, Kalila Smith, into the mysterious world of spirits. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, is a concise how-to manual for anyone who enjoys a good ghost hunt. Learn the history of spiritualism, learn what a ghost is and what is not, learn the truth about poltergeist. We'll also delve into the realm of spiritual beings that never were human, the world of demons, real vampires, and we'll look at some real case studies. This is a must-have for everyone interested in ghost hunting, from the novice to the expert. Completely updated in its second edition, this is one of the first guides for ghost hunting based on actual first-hand experiences. Available on Amazon.com. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, by Kalila Smith.
You're listening to Afterlife Radio.
Some people have the attitude of, oh, well, it's only a dog or it's only a cat. And I have to tell you, Billy, here in the United States, there's still people who torture cats. There's an entire culture of people here who are cat haters. Yeah. And, you can't let your cat outside because the cat hater down the street might kill it just simply because he hates cats. So he doesn't want you to have one. Yeah, we get that. I think there's just some people that are cruel. And I don't think they have to necessarily be in another country. They can be here in the United States. Yeah. There's still horrible people. There's people here who raise dogs to fight them. Yeah. And what they do to get the dogs to fight, they will go and get free kittens. People who give away free kittens, they go get the free kittens and throw them in as bait for the dogs. Or they go get the free kittens and feed them to snakes. I mean, there's a lot of animal cruelty going on. Yeah. And, one of the things that's happened recently is that the federal government here has made cruelty to animals a felony.
Oh, that's good.
And, so there's a little bit more stricter laws nowadays here, for being abusive to animals, even, neglectful of animals. You can be brought up on charges, or people who take their animals. I don't know if it happens in England, but people will decide they don't want their animal anymore and drive down a country road and leave it. Yes. And leave it with no one to take care of it. And that is considered, that's also considered, if you get caught doing something like that, it's a felony, because to leave the animal where it can't fend for itself, it's considered cruelty. So, things are improving, but I think there's always going to be evil people out there. I really do.
Oh, there is.
But we're running out of time, Billy. This has been fascinating and wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. And I'm sure everybody's going to leave and go hug their cat, hug their dog, and start having a better relationship with their animals and look at them in a different way. So until next week, guys, thank you and have a wonderful night. Billy, thank you as always. You have always been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kalila.